Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Snow and welcome to A Conscious Earth. So today I wanted to talk about a topic of conversation which I find to be really fascinating, and that is the topic of gluten. Now, the reason I find this really fascinating is because for so many years I didn't understand why I had so many friends who just could not eat gluten, and so the reasons varied from one person to the next. And so I was always someone who would go out for dinner with my friends, and I would pretty much gloat about the fact that I could eat gluten. And so when I began down the path of discovering what was going on with my own health, I thought I would tackle the topic of gluten with my own science experiments in terms of what I was doing with my own body. And I started to really dig into the research of gluten and what it was all about. And so I realised that gluten can be more harmful to the body than what I had initially realised. And so I had gone day in, day out eating pasta and breads and all of those types of things, all of the packaged foods on the supermarket shelves, and still I had been an athlete in my life as well. So before competition, I would carb load with pasta, but I didn't really understand the damage that gluten was doing to my body. And so eventually, when I started working on my health, I decided it was time to try not eating gluten for a period of time. And someone even said to me, be careful when you stop eating gluten, because chances are you'll find that when you start eating it again, all of a sudden you won't be able to eat it anymore. And I thought, well, thank you for that information. I'll keep that in the back of my mind. However, I want to get to the bottom of what's going on with my health. Maybe food is a really big issue. And so for a long time, I've talked about the fact that I had these really heavy symptoms that used to sit like around my eyes and my sinuses, and I never really understood what that was. And I went back and forwards to the doctors. I would have nasal sprays, medications, and nothing helped. And eventually I just took myself off everything because I just didn't want to be taking so many medications for the sake of taking them. But it was the day that I stopped eating gluten that all of a sudden what was going on through here with all of my sinus issues started to clear up. Now, years down the track, I now understand what was going on, and it was neurological fatigue. I was having issues with my adrenals as well, along with what else was going on there. I had brain fog. I was always prone to headaches. There was just so much going on. But the day I stopped eating gluten, all of those things started to disappear, and that was my aha moment. Now, gluten affects us in many, many different ways, and for those who are affected due to gut reasons, I generally think that they're the people who are the lucky ones, and merely for the fact that it can be an instant response for them, that they get an instant reaction from eating gluten. Those who have celiac disease will not eat gluten either. And so for me, my gluten issues stem a couple of days later. So it's not initially, but it's like two to 3 days later that all of a sudden I can get that neurological fatigue, I get the brain fog, my adrenals start to feel strained, my mood starts to go backwards, and it's just a cascading effect. And so when I took myself off gluten for that time, that's when I realized that gluten can be potentially harmful to the body. Now, it can also do things like people who suffer with rheumatoid arthritis or have eczema or psoriasis or other issues going on. Gluten can also impact those things as well. And so I've seen this time and time again. And of course, I'm not sitting here telling you not to eat gluten, and I'm someone who still enjoys gluten every now and again. But what I've also realized that if anxiety is quite high in my body, that gluten is also a trigger for that too. And so if I'm quite anxious about something, gluten and anxiety for me are not a good combination. However, if my anxiety levels are quite low, then I can occasionally eat gluten and enjoy it without the repercussions. But here's something else I experienced as well. And so my son, all those years ago, he was always a wound up Energizer bunny, like always just on the go. And I'd be really quite taken back when people just they wanted to label him with either autism or ADHD. And firstly, I think that's quite insincere that people just shoot from the mouth like that, because firstly, nobody has any idea as to what goes on in one person's life from one person to the next. And to just label people like that is really unkind, I feel. And so I did the right thing. I took him to a pediatrician, and thankfully the pediatrician was smart enough to tell me that no, there's nothing wrong with your son. But if you think that there's more going on, come back in 4 years from now. But as I can see, there's nothing going on. And so that was a relief, because in my heart of hearts, I knew that there wasn't a problem either. I just had to get to the root cause of what was going on with his behavior, with his outbursts, with his temper tantrums, with his night terrors, the continuous not sleeping. And when I realized that gluten was such an issue for me in my life in those days, that's when my husband and I realized it might have been a challenge for my son as well. And the day we took him off gluten was the day that the tantrum stopped, the behavior changed, he started sleeping through the night terrors stopped, and so many other things. And so people don't really understand when I go to parties and whatever it is, why I don't want my kids eating gluten. But I'm also not going to be that parent either that stops my kid from eating those things, and I will deal with the consequences and the fallout later. I've just seen with so many other kids as well what gluten can do. Now, gluten doesn't have to be the enemy either. Gluten for me is a preventative in my health, and I've got so much that I want to say around this topic, and today is just a snippet. However, it's something that if we look after our bodies properly, maybe we can enjoy gluten in our lives down the track without the repercussions. And that's certainly what I'm working towards, because now that I understand that I can enjoy a little bit of gluten in my life again without massive repercussions, I keep edging just that little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, bit by bit, by being able to enjoy it down the track a little bit more. However, I still predominantly want to eat as healthy as I can as a preventative measure to chronic illness later in life. I'm going to leave it at that for now. This was just a snippet today on my experience with gluten, but I'm going to come back again at some point, and I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of the nervous system and how it works with the nervous system as well. Talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.